Hello, everybody. We're back with another episode of The Kingdom. This is an episode Ashley's been calling the Rear View Mirror Edition. We're here in hot and sweaty New York City. I think it's a lot hotter here than in Morocco right now. I don't know. And we're here today to talk about values. So Soluna's been around for a little bit over a year now. And one thing I can tell you is that when we started, back when Soluna was a project codenamed Global Power, and we were sitting in a conference room, and it was just the John and Phil show. John was asking me a lot of questions about values, and that was something we spent a lot of time on early on. And let me ask you this, John. So you started 3 companies now. Why do you always start with values?
Well, I think the most important reason to start with values, and some people don't, they hope that they sort of evolve at some point. I think that's a mistake. But starting with values are a way to set up a set of foundational pieces around the company, call them footings for the business, for the company that should not change over time. A lot changes about a company, but the core values do not. And the other reason to lay them out is because when you create a company, it's very rare that you get to shape that company with people you've known for a very long time. Most of the time, you're forming a company with lots of new people who may have come from other companies that already have their own set of values, and those values may not apply to this particular company. And so it's important to get together a core set of people. If it doesn't happen from day one, it should happen fairly soon after the company has been running for a while, to establish what we believe to be things that are immutable about the company and that we as an organization agree upon going forward, so that there are no sort of unspoken assumptions that get the company into trouble, et cetera. And where I was from before, integrity wasn't important. We don't care about that. Oh, we care about integrity? Things like that might happen.
Why do you have values that are, so if you're a private company, you usually are in the business of making money, or you're in the business of providing yourself a certain lifestyle and, a certain level of income to support that lifestyle. Why?
So you're talking about
lifestyle business or a profit maximizing business. Those are 2 examples of businesses.
Right.
Why do you have values beyond just we're here to make money? I get the part about keeping teams together and focusing teams, but doesn't just profit focus people?
Yeah, it's a good question. So profit is sort of an easy thing. It's sort of part of what the company is doing because it delivers value to the world, or it exists and has created something that's valued by the world.
Because people are willing to pay for it.
Yeah, hopefully that value is delivered to the world in a way that's profitable, so the company can be around to continue to deliver that value. That's why profit ultimately is important beyond value creation and returning capital to investors. Like, the business just has to sort of exist. If you're an ice cream business, you got to keep the doors open to keep selling ice cream if people love the recipe. And that's the case for just about any company. Core values go beyond that, though. Core values are really about how we behave as employees and how the company behaves in the world. You may have 2 companies that do exactly the same thing, but how they approach their customers, how they approach the market, and how they look at different things that happen to the business through a specific lens will tell you a lot about the company's core values. And so profit is just one mechanical aspect of the company. Core values is almost a DNA level characteristic of a company. That
it's sort of like the way we see the world.
Yeah. But more importantly, it's the best way to describe it is how you behave under different circumstances. If you look at the company like a person, how does that person behave in the world? How does it move around? How does it relate to the world? And that should be immutable, and people should be able to recognize when it's that company doing it, because the brand is so tied, the core values are so tied into the brand and people's behavior and so forth. I'll give you an example. In a previous company that I ran, one of our core values was had a lot to do with the makeup of our people and how we present ourselves to customers. A lot of that is true for Soluna as well, because I'm a big believer in it. But quality and presenting a very professional feeling to a customer was really important to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent a lot of time talking to our employees about it and to the team about it. And there was one point where I was sitting with a customer, and it was over dinner, so it was a sort of social environment. And he sort of, and there were members of our team, and he leaned over to me and he said, "I've always been impressed by this company because just about everybody I meet is, first of all, really, really strong, and just they're very professional."
Mm-hmm.
That was gratifying to me because that's how we want people to see us, right? That's the experience that we want people to get. And that came from establishing it as a core value and burning it into people's minds that that's important.
Right. So it's like I have a rubric now. This is the way we operate. As long as I'm within that rubric, I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was, I would say, I'll interject as well for me, and then I'm going to ask you the same question. This year, the value of transparency.
Yeah.
Sometimes I didn't agree with something, or other team members didn't agree with something I was saying, and or maybe we had some bad news in one part of the business, and you're not sure whether or not to disseminate that. If you have transparency, well, I'm operating under this rubric called transparency, and I'm not gonna. No one should dress me down for sharing information. In other organizations, it's been different for me.
It's a core value, so it's something we all value.
Mm-hmm.
That's important to how we enjoy the company and how we engage and interact with each other, and how our company engages and interacts with the rest of the world. And so when you have a core value, and the core value says 100% transparency is important, you don't have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
The right thing to do is to share it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we found that to be very helpful to us in our business, and in the way we talk to investors, and in the way we engage with other constituents that we're involved in right now.
So when you formed the company, or when we started the company, the DNA was 100% renewable, transparent, and what were the other core values?
Supporting local economies.
Supporting local economies. And so what was your vision for the DNA based on those core values, and how has that changed or stayed the same over the last year?
Well, we can certainly go through each one in turn. I mean, we've been living those values for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Transparency, I think, has been probably the most important value for us, because there's so much happening in the business, and getting our team to be on the same page is important to sort of disseminate information. So having a core value of transparency helps with that. We've had to share lots of information about our company and all sorts of interesting things happening around our company with the government of Morocco and with potential investors, and being upfront with folks about what's happening and how we're approaching the business has proven to be very beneficial to us, especially when there are challenges in the business and we need some help solving for something. We have found that to be very helpful to us, just being upfront and clear about what's going on and what we're concerned about. And that has proven to be, very effective in helping companies and other folks get involved with us and help us through challenges that we've experienced in the last year. Also, with folks who are following our brand and interested in our project, we've tried to continue to provide updates as well, because people will stop me every now and then and says, "How's that project? How's it going? How's it going now?" With that sort of, eyebrow raised, because, the crypto world.
A lot of projects are dead.
Yeah, a lot of projects have sort of disappeared.
Yep.
Just being upfront about sort of, here's where we are. Here's what we're doing, here's a team, and what we're focused on right now has been extremely helpful. So transparency is something that hasn't changed for us, and I think it will be something that will be very difficult for us to change going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like an immutable core value that will stay with us for a long time. Supporting local economies, if I look at that one, we have been spending a lot of time in the last year understanding what our local economy in Morocco means to us. We've spent time with with the state. We've also spent time with the region of Dakhla, and most recently, we actually did a tour where we met with some of the elected officials, the Sawahari people. We had both official and not official meetings and conversations to really understand the history of the area and what a project like ours would mean to folks, and what it would mean to be supportive. I think one of the key things that we've realized over the last year is if we want to be supportive to a local economy, you absolutely cannot make any assumptions about what that means to that local economy, right? Should we? This is going to be a flip example, but should we fly planes and drop rice bags
right
in the desert? Was that supportive?
Roads and schools, maybe they don't need roads and schools.
Right,
maybe
right,
they need
right.
Hospitals. And whatever.
Exactly. What's important to them right now, and what was shared with us when we were in Dakhla recently was very insightful. I mean, it had a lot to do with job creation, but what I was encouraged to hear was it went much more beyond that. People have lots of interest beyond just the fact that we would create jobs, and we will do that, but there's more that they shared with us. We won't go in detail here because I think we still want to sort of tease some of those things out. But what we did for the first time is we started a dialogue with all of these folks from different parts. It was interesting. We had a meeting where 90% of the people in the room were women, professional women in the area, who are very involved in helping to sort of shape the social dynamics in the area. And they provided us a very clear idea of what was important to them and some of the other members of the community. And then we had dinner with some folks who kind of shared with us the history of the area and how they've moved from sort of, being in one form of government to a new form of government, and what that means for them now and going forward, how Soluna can participate in that. So supporting local economies is something that we haven't necessarily put in practice because we haven't launched our project fully, but we have spent a lot of time understanding what that means to people, and that will allow us to better develop a plan for when our project is running and our 1% program becomes active, and we can deploy that capital to programs that people will value.
Mm-hmm. And 100% renewable energy has, I don't think that's ever been much of a question for most of the time.
It hasn't been. We have been offered lots of different opportunities to either develop or co-develop projects that were not 100% renewable, or we've been offered the opportunity to put our machines in places that, it's funny, somebody would say, it's definitely, it's definitely a form of energy that will be regenerated, but it's not renewable.
Right. Yeah.
And we passed on those projects. They would allow us to kind of do what we're doing very quickly, but they wouldn't meet that core value. And we very often ask folks about that and says, well, yeah, we can't do that.
Would you say that's the business? That's the I'm just trying to say virtue, but the value that we have had the most opportunities to break, or which one? Where do you feel like we've been tested the most this year?
That's a good question. Well, the renewable one, that definitely has come up a lot, and even with some of the partners we've been talking to recently. They'll say, we've got this facility. You can buy some machines from us, deploy your equipment, and start developing your economic model, and then move it to Dakhla. And we said, well, where is that located? First question is always, what's the cost of power? They say it's really low. It's some number.
Yeah.
And then we would say, great. So, well, wait, what's the power resource? And they would say,
clean coal.
I didn't want to say that. Yeah, stuff like that, clean coal, natural gas, and we would say, great, we can't do that.
Yep.
They were like, wait, what do you mean? It has to be 100% renewable. That's something that we do. So that is one I would say that has come up a lot, and people have offered us opportunities to break that. Transparency has been another. I think I wouldn't say that it's sort of come up as opportunities to not be transparent. But there have been things that have happened that we could have easily not shared with people.
Right.
But we chose to share them because it's important, again, to be upfront about what's going on. So that one has been tested. And then supporting local economies, I wouldn't say it's been tested. It's just more, there's a big question mark. What does that mean?
Right.
And so we've had to invest in becoming a lot clearer about what that means and in what timeframes.
Yeah, and sometimes that investment is at the cost of moving other parts of the business forward. So you could say, well,
yeah, exactly.
That's squishy and we'll get that done later. And
right.
It's important now as well.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to founders who are maybe starting this process for the first time and, you just went through it and years have gone by? How do you do this well? How do you do this right? And how do you not have your values change every quarterly update?
Right. It's a good question. Developing core values are hard, but they're also easy. The first thing I would suggest is to define the ones that are clearly not core, right? So I always ask people to say, well, look at the last 3 places you've worked and your experiences there, and make a list of all the things that made that place really enjoyable and helpful to your career, and you felt was consistent about that company. And then make the opposite list, all the things that you felt really eroded from what made the company special and you did not enjoy about that company. Those become at least the 2 lists that you can draw from to sort of, okay, now you're creating a clean slate. What will be important in the company that you're creating? That starts to establish a set of core values. So that exercise tends to be very handy. And then the other is to just think about sort of, you kind of need to answer the question, why does the company exist, so that you can better understand how to frame what's going to be important as a core value. And so in our case, we believe that the existence of our company is really to help create more renewable power around the world. And renewable power projects and power projects in general are infrastructure projects. They make a to some extent, I mean, you're talking about 25 to 50 years, an indelible change in an area. And so how do you do that in a way that respects the local economy and principles, and does it even take those environments into account? And that's a question. How will we behave in that environment and making a decision on it?
Yeah, I think that renewable energy as a value has also it's become a core purpose of the business as well. So we started with mining and blockchain and looking at that and then saying, wow, well, within the suite of companies that our parent company manages, we actually know about power. So that's something we can latch onto. But then as we've developed a business plan and expertise, I think renewable energy and realizing this could be a new model to drive the adoption of renewable energy, as opposed to, other visions of the infrastructure layer of the blockchain. We're going to do that as well, but we're really using that service and harnessing that to do something that fundamentally I'm very excited about, which is the adoption of renewable energy. So that's, I think it's sort of keeps moving forward, at least in my mind personally, the renewable aspect of the project.
Yeah, I mean, they're integrated to some extent, right? Our ability to move renewable energy forward is driven by the fact that we're leveraging this transformational change that's happening in this new technology, and the fact that new technology has a real need for energy. When I talk about the business, I usually start by saying, just forget about everything you know about everything, actually, because I think there's a lot of there's a lot of education that's been done about blockchain already for most people. And so what we then do is try to starting from a clean slate and talking about the 2 issues in those 2 boxes, the fact that the world needs more renewable energy and the fact that blockchain computing and cryptocurrencies are sort of out of the box and they're not going back in, and they have the opportunity to create a major transformation in all sorts of parts of the world economy. And the technology that's behind these capabilities was originally designed to use power as a way to secure the network and so forth. And so what's interesting is that model needs more renewable energy too.
Mm-hmm.
And so our goal was to sort of solve both of those problems using this new vertically integrated approach. And it's becoming clear to us that the world needs more of the renewable thing than anything, not just blockchain, but the whole world needs more renewable power. And that's becoming really important. So we've invested more in trying to understand the role that we can play there and develop a model that looks beyond sort of our initial flagship location to how this model can be replicated around the world to bring more renewable power to places that wouldn't normally get it.
Yeah, so that's a question that I have. So as you think about, we're in phase one, we've got, the number of employees we have, you can count on a hand or two.
Yeah.
As the company scales, and as you even went from John plus Phil plus others to now a real team, how has the values driven culture and how do you use that as a competitive advantage?
That's a good question. I do believe that, culture eats strategy in a lot of ways. What we're doing is so new, and so it requires us to work really well as a team. We really don't have any kind of, time to have issues sort of, within the team. And so the core values that we've chosen actually has helped us immensely in ensuring that that's true. We really spend time sharing with each other as much as possible, at least once or twice a quarter. If we can't do it in person, we do it on a regular basis where we sort of share where we are, what we're thinking, what are the big challenges and how we feel about that. So there's no pent up view. So transparency has really helped us in that regard. And then creating a team that essentially naturally and carefully marriages the passions for both of those problems, if you will. And we've used that a lot to construct the team and bring other players to the team to help us enhance expertise where we're weak. And that's enabled us to execute much better than we would have if we didn't do that. And we test for people's values as well and what they care about. And we're fortunate enough to have formed relationships with parties that share the values that we share. This market, both from a renewable perspective and a blockchain perspective, can be you can have some dark corners. Let's put it that way. And we've been fortunate enough to form relationships with folks who are very reputable and have deep experience in the areas that we're bringing together. And I think that has helped us to accelerate what we're doing. Even in a environment where it takes time to do things, we're actually going much faster than you normally would. And we don't move away from that. Our vendors tell us. And so we definitely use that to differentiate ourselves from other folks who are in the market.
So if we're doing rearview mirror episode number 10, 10 years down the road from now, do you expect our core values will change, or?
I hope they don't change, but I leave open the opportunity for us to expand upon them. There may be one other element. Right now, we sort of have three legs to the stool. That maybe there's a fourth that emerges that we will learn over the next few years. But I think the three that we've established so far, I feel like they're going to be around for a very long time.
Good. Well, rearview mirror episode number 1 down. I look forward to doing another one next July. Hopefully not as hot.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. In the sweltering heat.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
All right,
Thanks,
cool.
Bill.
That's Soluna signing out.